The Luna dust stretched endlessly, a pallid ocean under the pale glare of Sol. Dr. Zelran brushed his clawed fingers across the surface of an artifact that hummed faintly beneath his touch, the vibration almost imperceptible, like the whisper of a heartbeat half forgotten. He knelt, listening. His alien senses, honed to detect the minute shifts of tectonic resonance and energy fluctuations, told him something extraordinary was buried beneath the moon's gray crust. Another layer of regolith. 60 meters down, murmured Kael'thas, his second in command, scanning the holographic readouts projected from his gauntlet. The sensors flickered with bursts of archaic signals, patterns that defied their understanding of pre-human civilization. Zelran's eyes narrowed. Patterns rarely persisted for 500,000 years. They weren't just here, Zelran said, voice low and measured. They left instructions for someone, or something, to find. The dig site stretched over what had once been an expanse of lunar plains, now pockmarked with the scars of alien excavation machinery. The team was careful, almost reverent, as if the dust itself could punish mistakes. Their suits hummed and hissed, life support systems masking the thin lunar air. Zelran moved with a patience that bordered on obsession. Every vibration, every microfracture could mean the difference between discovery and catastrophe. They unearthed a rectangular stone, dark with age, embedded with metallic lines that pulsed faintly. The command beacon. Even from a distance, Zelran felt its rhythm, a metronome counting down centuries. "Is it alive?" Kael'thas asked, the words almost trembling. Zelran didn't answer immediately. He knelt, running a scanner over the object. Symbols glowed faintly under the alien device, untranslatable but unmistakably structured. The pulse quickened. "Alive, yes," he said finally, "but not in the way you think. It waits. Patient. Calculating. Like the humans themselves." He remembered the stories, myths passed between star systems. Terran ingenuity, stubbornness, and a courage that outshone fleets of enemies. Stories that many dismissed as folklore. Zelran, a historian, had dedicated his life to proving the Terran myth was real. Now perhaps he had the evidence. The team worked through the artificial night, their tools slicing through rock and ancient alloys. Dust choked the machinery, but nothing could stop Zelran's determination. Every fragment they uncovered seemed infused with purpose. Ancient human architecture, or what passed for it, was precise, resilient and alien in its simplicity. Finally, Kael'thas uncovered the first fragment of a larger structure, a piece that resonated with the command beacon itself. As he pried it free, a vibration shook the ground. The entire moon hummed faintly at first, then like the low roar of a beast awakening. Zelran froze. His mind raced through calculations, probabilities, contingencies. This shouldn't be happening. The moon shouldn't respond to a fragment of stone. Not unless... A fissure appeared beneath their boots, a hairline crack stretching across the plain. Dust spiraled upward, ghostly in the harsh lunar light. "The beacon," Zelran whispered, stepping back. "It's calling." And then, for the first time in 500,000 years, a door opened in the lunar crust. Not a literal door, but a slow, grinding shift of millions of tons of rock, revealing darkness that had never seen light. A void where something immense had been waiting, patient and silent. Kael'thas's claws twitched. "Zelran, what have we done?" The historian's eyes reflected both awe and dread. "We found them," he said, voice barely audible. "And we've awoken the ghosts of history." As the ground continued to shift, Zelran felt something stir within him. Something human, a surge of curiosity, of wonder and fear. The pulse of the beacon seemed to resonate with his own heartbeat. For the first time, he understood why humans had become legends. They were relentless even in absence, persistent beyond reason. A whisper of wind carried through the hollow lunar chamber sounded almost like a voice. "You should not have disturbed us," it seemed to say. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the first glimmer of a Terran vessel stirred, unseen but immensely powerful, waiting to obey a command that had not been given for centuries. Zelran's breath caught. He knew, even without seeing, that the moon itself had become a cage and a gateway. The dust settled. The silence that followed was deafening. Then faintly, a sound like metal shifting in deep space echoed through the hollow. A heartbeat of steel and human memory, long dormant, now awakening. And Zelran understood. Some mysteries of history should never be touched. The hollow beneath the lunar dust was impossibly vast. Zelran felt it with every vibration through the ground, every subtle hum of ancient machinery that should have been dead. The air, or what passed for it in the pressurized tunnels of their excavation rigs, was thick with the scent of ozone and metal. His senses screamed. Something vast slept here, a presence both mechanical and alive. "Report," he barked, voice taut with tension. Kael'thas's multi-lensed eyes darted over the readings. The sensor arrays were going haywire, struggling to map the space before them. Energy signatures flickered, pulsing in patterns that defied alien understanding. "It's bigger than anything we imagined," Kael'thas admitted, claws brushing over a console. "Whole fleets, corridors of ships, Zelran, hundreds, thousands maybe, dormant but connected." Zelran swallowed, a twinge of something alien but eerily human coursing through him, a cocktail of fear and thrill. He had studied humans for decades, their myths, their wars, their will to endure, but never had he truly felt the weight of their legacy. And now it lay beneath his feet, waiting. "Keep your distance," he said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "We don't know what triggers them." They descended into the yawning darkness, their lights cutting through centuries of shadow. The walls were etched with symbols, ornate, purposeful, and yet chillingly unfamiliar. Zelran traced them with his fingers. He felt a whisper of memory, as if the humans themselves had left a message not for interpretation but for recognition. "They weren't just builders," he murmured. "They were thinkers, strategists, artists of war." A tremor ran through the cavern, subtle at first, then growing stronger. The beacon, which had lain dormant for millennia, pulsed faster, its light flickering like a heartbeat. It was no longer a signal, it was a command. A call across time. Kael'thas froze. "Do you hear that?" Zelran tilted his head. The sound was deep, resonating in the bones of his exoskeleton. A mechanical sigh, a shudder of immense proportions followed by the grinding of metal against metal, and then, almost imperceptibly, lights blinked across the hulls of ships lying in stasis. Thousands of them, each vessel enormous, carved from alloys that had not corroded in 500,000 years. "They're waking," Zelran whispered. The historian's mind raced. The Terran myth had always emphasized human ingenuity and defiance, but this was beyond legend. These were weapons of war, yes, but also vessels of exploration, of survival. The humans had built them to endure not just centuries, but eons. A corridor opened beneath them, revealing a central chamber where the command beacon sat at the heart of a star-shaped hub. Energy arcs hummed along the walls, illuminating the faces of the alien dig team. And there, in the pulsing glow, the first holographic projection flickered into life. A human figure, tall, armored, staring into the void with eyes that seemed alive across time itself. "Protocol." "Activate," the figure intoned. The voice was metallic yet unmistakably human. "All units, awaken." Zelran felt the walls shudder as one of the enormous vessels stirred. Engines long cold roared to life, filling the cavern with vibrations so strong that the diggers' boots lifted slightly off the ground. Dust and rock cascaded from the ceiling, illuminated by the ghostly glint of steel awakening. "Kael'thas." Zelran's voice was tight, tense. "Step back now." But it was too late. The moon itself responded. Cracks widened, dust clouds erupted, and a network of stasis hangars opened like petals blooming after a million-year winter. The air, or vacuum, was charged with anticipation. Energy pulses shot along conduits, sinking the vessels as though each were a heartbeat in a single colossal organism. And in that moment, Zelran understood the danger. They had not merely uncovered history, they had disturbed a war fleet built to enforce Terran will across the galaxy. Whatever that meant in the present was impossible to predict. Kael'thas's claws trembled as he scanned the readings. "They're scanning," he said. "The ships, they're scanning the entire system. They can see beyond the moon, beyond the solar orbit." Zelran's mind raced. This was no longer an archaeological expedition. This was survival. The humans had left instructions for a reason. And now, whatever their ancient purpose, it was about to collide with the present. Through the cavern, the echoes of metal and energy sang a song of old human defiance. "They called it madness," Zelran muttered under his breath, eyes wide. "The humans called it Monday." One of the vessels shifted forward, immense thrusters awakening, pushing against centuries of lunar dust. A low hum became a growl, vibrating the cavern and resonating in the very bones of the aliens. Then a second, a third, until the entire armada stirred, a forest of steel awakening as if the galaxy itself had held its breath for 500,000 years. Zelran felt the pull of awe and terror at once. Every instinct screamed retreat, but every fiber of curiosity, the very human part he admired, kept him rooted. The humans had built wonders beyond comprehension, and now those wonders moved again. "History isn't finished," he whispered. "It's awake." And somewhere in the dark, a faint voice carried through the energy hum of the fleet seemed to ask a question older than time itself. "Who dares wake us?" The first ship's thrusters ignited, casting stark shadows across the cavern walls. Its sheer size dwarfed the diggers' machines, and yet there was a precision to its movement that hinted at intelligence, not just engineering. Zelran felt the pulse of power vibrating through the ground. The moon, once inert and silent, had become a living stage, and the actors were centuries-old instruments of human ingenuity. "Estimate the fleet size," Kael'thas said, his voice tight. He pointed to the holographic displays, but the readings were inconsistent. Each sensor pinged only to be overwhelmed by energy surges. Zelran inhaled through his suit, feeling the rhythm of the ships, the slow, deliberate awakening. Hundreds, possibly thousands, all linked through the beacon, all operational. He walked closer to the central hub, toward the pulsing command beacon. His alien instincts screamed caution, yet the human part of him, the part he had spent decades studying, admiring, pushed him forward. Humans had always tested boundaries. They had always defied the impossible. And now, in this echo of their civilization, Zelran understood why. Curiosity was inseparable from courage. From the depths of the hangar, a second vessel stirred. Its hull, dark as obsidian and etched with intricate Terran glyphs, glided forward. Sensors flared as if scanning the intruders. Kael'thas's claws brushed over the console, trembling. "They're aware of us, yes," Zelran said, heart tightening. "They sense life, motion, thought." For a moment, the alien historian felt the weight of millennia pressing down. The humans had not merely built machines, they had built sentience. The vessels communicated in ways the team could barely perceive, sharing data across beams of light and energy that bent the sensors into incomprehensible patterns. It was as if the Terran fleet had never truly slept, only paused. "Zelran, what if they see us as threats?" Kael'thas whispered, scanning the chamber. Zelran hesitated. In his years of studying humanity, he had read about their paradoxical nature. Compassionate yet ruthless, ingenious yet reckless, persistent beyond reason. Now he was forced to confront it directly. The humans, even 500,000 years later, were still formidable. Not in myth, but in reality. A low hum began to grow into a roar as multiple vessels activated. Lights across the cavern pulsed in sync, reflecting the networked intelligence of the fleet. Data streams, invisible to the naked eye, flowed between ships, creating a lattice of computation and readiness that dwarfed even the most advanced alien systems. Zelran's mind raced. They had triggered something vast, something ancient. The beacon had called, and the Terran fleet had answered. But why now? What directive remained after 500,000 years? "Zelran, the moon!" Kael'thas pointed. Through the shifting dust and debris, the surface cracked, revealing jagged openings that seemed to breathe. "It's opening further, as if the entire crust is alive." The historian's jaw tightened. He knew instinctively that the moon itself had been engineered as a tomb, a cradle, and a fortress all at once. Humans had hidden their fleet beneath layers of lunar rock for a reason. And now they were being recalled. A distant tremor ran through the hangar. A third vessel had awakened, its bridge illuminating a spectral figure. An echo of Terran command. The hologram flickered, yet its presence was undeniable. "All units, verify targets. Await instruction." Zelran swallowed hard. Their instruction would not come from him, not from any living being. It would come from the protocols encoded by humans themselves, the remnants of a species that had vanished yet refused to be forgotten. Kael'thas's eyes widened. They're scanning beyond the moon, the solar system, the planets, even the orbital stations we've abandoned. Zelran felt a chill crawl through him. The Terran myth was no legend. It was a warning. Humans had built machines to enforce their will, to protect what they considered sacred. And now, with the beacon reawakened, The galaxy itself might be judged according to criteria long forgotten. The historian looked at the vast armada stretching beneath the lunar crust. The sheer scale was overwhelming. Thousands of ships, silent and waiting, each capable of unimaginable destruction, yet bound to ancient protocols that even Zelron could barely comprehend. A question gnawed at him. What did humanity deem worthy of its attention? What threats demanded such a response? Then, as if answering, the first ship shifted into orbit, its engines igniting with a blinding flare, light reflected across the cavern walls, blinding in its intensity. Dust spiraled in the low gravity as Zelron shielded his eyes. "They're leaving the moon," he whispered, "and they'll search for whatever they consider a threat." Kael'thas glanced at him, fear evident. Do we try to stop them?" Zelron shook his head. "No, we observe. We survive. Humans are not predictable, but they are always purposeful." A faint vibration ran through the floor, an almost imperceptible heartbeat, and Zelron realized something terrifying. The fleet was more than metal and energy. It carried the will of humanity itself, a force that demanded respect, that demanded attention. In the flickering shadows, the historian allowed himself a thought he had never dared speak aloud. The Terran myth was not a tale of lost glory or idle adventure. It was a reminder, a testament to the ingenuity, courage, and relentless defiance of humans. And now, after 500,000 years, that defiance had a voice again. Zelron swallowed. Somewhere deep within the hangar, in the rhythm of engines and hum of energy, a presence subtle, intelligent, almost divine seemed to watch. Not maliciously, not benignly, but with the awareness of a creator whose children had returned to remind the universe of their existence. The historian took a cautious step back. His hand brushed the edge of the beacon. Its pulse resonated with his own heartbeat. For the first time he understood. Humans had built not just machines, but legacies that could outlive even the stars themselves. The moon's hollow corridors echoed with mechanical pulses, a rhythm older than any living being in the solar system. Zelron and Kael'thas moved cautiously, their suits hissing with life support, the thin light of their headlamps barely piercing the gloom. The Terran armada had awakened fully now, each vessel a silent sentinel of unimaginable scale. "Status report," Zelron demanded, though the words felt almost insignificant against the chorus of engines and energy thrums around them. Kael'thas's claws hovered over the console, sensors flickering as the readings stabilized. "They're scanning every inch of the moon, the solar system, even the ships we abandoned centuries ago, the automated protocols. They're determining threats." Zelron's stomach tightened. Threats. That word carried weight in human terms. Calculated, relentless, uncompromising. A human ship, or thousands of them, would not hesitate to neutralize anything deemed dangerous. He remembered the myths he had studied for decades. Humans had always been survivors, but also judges. They assessed with precision, acted with purpose, and punished indiscriminately when necessary. And now, their judgment was sweeping across the solar system. The first human vessel shifted into low lunar orbit, its engines flaring, illuminating the cavern below. Zelron shielded his eyes against the sudden brilliance. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, settling slowly in the low gravity. "They're targeting us," Kael'thas whispered, voice tight. "Or at least, assessing." The sensors went wild. Energy beams scanned the excavation site, sweeping across the diggers like invisible fingers. Zelron felt the hum of the beacon resonate through him. It was no longer a pulse, it was a command, a call, a challenge. He stepped forward, trying to communicate with the fleet. "We are not a threat," he said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his chest. But of course they could not hear him. They would not listen to alien words. They would only respond to criteria set 500,000 years ago. A holographic projection flickered in the center of the hangar. A Terran commander, frozen in stasis, now moved with deliberate precision. "Unit assessment. Unknown life forms detected. Threat evaluation ongoing. Parameters: survival, intelligence, proximity to command beacon." Zelron swallowed. They were alive in their logic, in their vigilance, in their protocols. The Terran fleet was not just machinery, it was the embodiment of human intent, and the intent was unforgiving. Kael'thas glanced at him, eyes wide. "What do we do?" Zelron's mind raced. Retreat would be perilous. The fleet controlled the corridors, the airlocks, the very structural integrity of the moon. They were trapped, observed, analyzed. Every choice carried risk. He remembered something fundamental about humans. They never gave up. Even when outnumbered, outgunned, or outclassed, they adapted. They found solutions where none seemed possible. And that would be their only hope now. Move slowly, he said, voice low but determined. Show intelligence. Show purpose. They recognize willpower, cunning, survival instinct. That is how humans survive. That is how we survive. The dig team obeyed, advancing carefully, every step measured. The Terran fleet's sensors followed them relentlessly. Every micro-movement registered, every pulse of energy analyzed. Then a sudden shift. A section of the cavern wall rotated, revealing a narrow passage, previously hidden. Energy beams swept past it, and for a moment Zelron wondered if it was a trap. They want us to go there, he whispered. Or they've calculated that we have no choice. Kel'Thas hesitated, claws brushing over the console. Do you trust them? Zelron shook his head, though he knew the answer was more complex. Trust was human, irrational, dangerous, but sometimes necessary. Sometimes survival demanded it. As they moved through the passage, the cavern expanded into an immense chamber. Dozens of vessels hovered silently, their hulls gleaming faintly in the filtered light. The energy pulses had a cadence now, a heartbeat that seemed to recognize their presence. And then, without warning, one of the ships rotated, projecting a holographic figure directly in front of them. A human face, stern, commanding, and undeniably alive in its expression. Identify yourselves, it demanded. State purpose and allegiance. Zelron stepped forward, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. I am Dr. Zelron, historian. We are archaeologists. We seek knowledge, not conflict. The hologram's eyes scanned him, unblinking. Protocol requires verification. Survival is dependent on compliance with Terran directives. Demonstrate competence. Demonstrate purpose. Demonstrate will. Zelron realized the depth of what he was facing. These machines did not merely judge strength, they judged intent, creativity, and courage. They were human in essence, and yet beyond humanity. Kel'Thas's voice was barely audible. How do we prove ourselves? Zelron took a deep breath. He had studied the Terran myth, known their history, known their courage. Now it was time to act. We survive, he said. We adapt. We endure. We are human enough for them to recognize our worth. The first pulse of energy from the command beacon intensified. The hologram tilted its head slightly, a gesture almost human, almost contemplative. Then without warning, the chamber doors opened further, revealing another corridor, deeper, more complex. Zelron knew instinctively. This was not merely a test. This was the first judgment, and the outcome would determine whether they lived or became another lesson in the galaxy's long memory. A low hum reverberated through the floor, and in that hum Zelron felt something ancient, immense and almost divine. The humans had built more than ships. They had built legacies that could judge, protect, and endure across eons. The corridor stretched endlessly before Zelron and his team, the walls alive with faint energy traces that pulsed like veins beneath the lunar rock. Every step echoed against steel-reinforced chambers, yet the sounds were swallowed by the low hum of immense machinery. The Terran fleet was no longer just a presence, it was a predator, calculating, observing, ready to test them. Kel'Thas moved cautiously, claws scraping lightly against the smooth metal floor. Every sensor is alive, he whispered. Every corner, every shadow, it's like the fleet knows we exist before we move. Zelron felt it too. The pulse of the command beacon resonated through the floor, syncing with the energy of the ships above. It was a rhythm both mechanical and human, an intelligence designed not just to detect but to judge. And judgment, Zelron knew, could be merciless. A sudden flash of light illuminated the corridor ahead. Automated defense systems activated. Turrets, sleek and silent in their stasis, pivoted toward them, scanning for signatures, ready to neutralize threats. Zelron froze. The systems were old, built by humans long vanished, yet their precision was flawless. They calculated trajectories, predicted movement, and adapted instantly. We can't fight them, Kel'Thas muttered. Not with conventional means. Zelron's mind raced. Retreat wasn't an option. The fleet controlled every corridor, every airlock, every junction. Survival required ingenuity, the very essence of humanity. Humans had always overcome impossible odds, not through luck, but through cleverness, empathy, and relentless adaptation. "Observe," Zelron whispered. "We're going to move like they expect us to move, but not how they calculate." He led the team along the sidewall, pressing lightly against energy conduits, their movement erratic but controlled. The automated turrets pivoted, lasers tracing predictable arcs, but Zelron had noticed the pattern. Half a dozen steps, then pause. 3 beats, then lateral shift. It was methodical but not omniscient. Human intuition, even through 500,000 years of mechanized enforcement, could still find gaps. They ducked behind a bulkhead, breath hissing through suits. Kael'thas's eyes widened. "You're reading them?" Zelron nodded. "Not reading, predicting. Humans always left room for adaptability. These are their patterns, learned but not perfect." The corridor narrowed, forcing them into a gauntlet. Laser grids crisscrossed ahead, blinking in lethal rhythm. Zelron crouched, assessing. Each beam had a pause, a pulse, a pattern, a signature of human thought embedded in machinery. "Timing," he murmured. "We move on the hesitation. Not when it's active, but when it calculates, we won't." The team moved in sync, Zelron leading, Kael'thas shadowing, their steps perfectly timed to the beat of the systems. A wrong move would trigger instant incineration, or worse, signal their presence to the fleet above. Halfway through, an unexpected pulse shifted the patterns. The floor vibrated. A section of the wall rotated, revealing a trap chamber. Zelron's instincts screamed. The beacon pulsed violently, as if warning him, guiding him. "Split," he ordered. "Kael'thas, left flank. I take the right." They separated, moving with precision born of observation and instinct. Energy grids shifted, recalibrating to their paths. The Terran systems were adaptive, but human ingenuity, even echoed through alien brains, could still outthink them. Zelron ducked under a sweeping laser, feeling the heat of its arc graze his armor. Sparks flew, but he pressed forward. He could feel the beacon's pulse syncing with his own heartbeat, urging him onward. Each movement, each calculated risk, was a dance with the intelligence of a species long gone, yet still profoundly human. At the gauntlet's end, they reached a reinforced door, etched with Terran glyphs that glowed faintly. The automated systems powered down immediately, recognizing them as passing entities, or perhaps acknowledging their display of adaptability. Kael'thas exhaled, claws clicking against the metal floor. I thought we'd be vaporized." Zelron shook his head, chest heaving. "Humans survive not because they are invincible, but because they anticipate. They adapt. They endure." He pressed a hand to the glyphs, and a panel slid open, revealing a chamber bathed in soft energy. It was the first room free of immediate threat, a sanctuary or perhaps another test. Inside, dormant vessels hummed quietly, smaller than the main fleet but still formidable. Lights flickered along control panels, showing schematics of ships, weapons, and star charts. Zelron studied them, awestruck. Every system, every vessel, a repository of knowledge. They planned for contingencies we can't even imagine. Kael'thas glanced around nervously. "And yet, we made it through." "Yes," Zelron said softly. "Because we thought. Because we adapted. Because we survived." He looked at the beacon, now steady in its pulse. This is what humans left behind. A test, a challenge, and a legacy of ingenuity. He realized suddenly that the fleet was more than a war machine. It was a mirror of human spirit, relentless, adaptive, uncompromising. They had awakened not just ships, but the essence of what humans had been. Clever, courageous, and unstoppable when pressed to the edge. The room pulsed softly, and Zelron understood the next test was coming. A deeper trial, one that would push their courage, creativity, and resolve to the limit. And somewhere in the quiet hum of energy, a presence, subtle, vast, and almost divine, seemed to acknowledge their success. Not mercy, not judgment, but recognition. The chamber's soft hum reverberated in Zelron's chest, mingling with his own heartbeat. Each vessel, each conduit, each pulse of light felt alive, not mechanical, not alien, but human. He realized with a thrill and a pang of fear. They were inside the mind of a species that had mastered survival, to a degree no alien civilization had ever matched. Kael'thas leaned close to a control panel, scanning the schematics of the smaller vessels around them. "These are scouts," he said, voice hushed. dormant but ready to deploy. They can analyze, adapt, and possibly attack, all within seconds. Zelron nodded. They've designed everything to respond intelligently. Not just firepower, adaptation, anticipation, human ingenuity coded into metal and energy. The historian moved closer to the command beacon, tracing his claw across its surface. Each pulse seemed to speak, subtle vibrations carrying data directly to his neural interface. It was more than information. It was insight, strategy, calculation. Every protocol the humans had left behind was not just a defensive measure. It was a test, a way to evaluate those who might disturb their legacy. A sudden vibration ran through the floor. The lights flickered. Sensors went haywire. Zelron felt it before he could see it. The first automated scouting vessel had activated. It hovered silently, engines muted, energy reading stable but intense. Its lenses tracked their movements, analyzing, calculating. Keltas hissed. "It's alive. It knows we're here." "Yes," Zelron said, voice taut. "And it will test us. Not with fire, but with intellect, with ingenuity. That is the true measure of a human-designed system." The vessel projected a holographic interface in front of them. A human figure, sharp-eyed, deliberate, and unmistakably commanding. Its voice was steady, mechanical, and yet unmistakably human. "Identify your purpose. Demonstrate relevance. Threat level unknown. Protocol. Evaluation in progress." Zelron realized the enormity of the moment. These machines didn't just kill. They judged. They assessed intent, creativity, and resilience. They could simulate scenarios, predict outcomes, and adapt. Their intelligence was human intelligence amplified by eons of engineering. Keltas's claws twitched nervously. Do we argue with it?" Zelron shook his head. "No, we demonstrate." He stepped forward, carefully choosing his words. "We are explorers, historians, seekers of knowledge. We disturb nothing without reason. We adapt and we survive. We are human enough for this evaluation." The holographic figure tilted its head. Energy pulses shifted. A panel on the vessel displayed projections of their immediate environment, possible escape routes, and outcomes of every conceivable action. Then the first test began. The floor shifted, revealing a maze-like structure designed to probe their problem-solving agility and ingenuity. Traps, energy grids, and mechanical obstacles awaited, each calibrated to challenge them without immediate destruction. Zelron's mind raced. This was more than survival, it was a measure of intellect. Every step, every decision mattered. Humans had built this not to destroy intruders, but to see who could think, who could endure, who could rise to the challenge. Keltas glanced at him. "We can't fail." "No," Zelron said, determination hardening his voice. "Because failure will not just end us, it will trigger the fleet, and then there will be no negotiation." They navigated the maze with precision, using every skill Zelron had learned studying humans: pattern recognition, lateral thinking, anticipation of failure, and creative problem-solving. Lasers swept close, mechanical arms pivoted, and sections of the floor shifted, but they adapted, improvising at every turn. The vessel observed silently, calculating, recording, adjusting. And in that observation, Zelron felt an almost divine presence, not threatening, but vast, intelligent, aware. It was as if the universe itself was watching. Approving ingenuity, rewarding persistence, finally, they reached the center of the maze, a platform with a console displaying star maps, weapon schematics, and mission logs of the Terran fleet. Zelron touched it, feeling the pulse of human legacy flow through him. This was not just data, it was the essence of the species. Their courage, their will, their ingenuity, all encoded in systems that had endured 500,000 years. The scout vessel tilted, acknowledging their passage. Its holographic commander spoke again. "Evaluation complete. Threat level low. Relevance high. Proceed to next stage." Keltas exhaled, relief flooding his posture. "We passed?" Zelron nodded, but his eyes were wide with awe and fear. "Not passed," he said. "Recognized. The humans built intelligence that judges intent, and it has deemed us worth observing." He looked back toward the chamber's exit. Beyond it lay the deeper heart of the Terran Armada, corridors filled with vessels capable of interstellar deployment, weapons capable of annihilation, and systems designed to evaluate not just strength, but the very character of those who dared enter. A thought struck him. The humans had left more than machines. They had left morality, judgment, and subtle reminders of their faith, embedded in the logic of the fleet. Every protocol reflected their ingenuity, yes, but also their understanding of survival, courage, and choice. Zelran felt the pulse of the command beacon synchronize with his own heartbeat. The subtle, almost divine awareness he had felt earlier was stronger now, as if the universe itself acknowledged the ingenuity and courage of those who dared face human legacy. And in that quiet moment, he understood the scale of what they had awakened, not just a fleet, but a living testament to human willpower, creativity, and endurance. The deeper chamber yawned before them, vast and impossibly tall, as if the moon itself had been hollowed to cradle the armada. Vessels of every conceivable class hovered in silence, their hulls reflecting the dim light of the beacon above. Zelran felt the weight of centuries pressing down, the silence of machines built to endure and judge echoing louder than any sound he had ever known. This is the heart, Kael'thas whispered, claws brushing the floor. All the armada, all the data, everything humans created. Zelran nodded slowly. And now, it tests us. The first trial began subtly. A series of holographic projections appeared around them, depicting scenarios the humans had prepared long ago. Not battles, not immediately, but moral and strategic dilemmas. Populations at risk, resources dwindling, allies and enemies indistinguishable in the fog of war. The scenarios played out in real time, interactive and fluid. This is simulation? Kael'thas asked, tension curling through his voice. More than simulation, Zelran said, eyes narrowing. It's a test of judgment. They don't just want strength. They want cunning, empathy, creativity, and moral clarity. They're assessing the very essence of what it means to act under pressure. A projection of a human colony appeared, under threat from a massive asteroid impact. Options flashed in the hologram: evacuate, divert resources, or sacrifice a portion to save the whole. Zelran instinctively reached for the console. Time is not infinite, the holographic Terran commander intoned. Decisions will be evaluated for efficiency, creativity, and survival outcomes. Errors will have consequences. Kael'thas glanced at him, claws twitching. Consequences? We're not even real targets. Are they testing us for termination? Zelran shook his head, a thread of awe in his voice. They're testing judgment. Humans valued ingenuity as much as bravery. They calculated outcomes, predicted mistakes, but also rewarded cleverness and moral clarity. We succeed not through power but through understanding, through thinking like them. He studied the scenario, heart pounding. He weighed choices not as a historian, but as a strategist, a human in spirit. Sacrificing some to save many was cold but efficient. Risking everything to save all was reckless but morally compelling. Zelran calculated probabilities while listening to his own instincts. Intuition shaped by a deep admiration for humanity. He acted. The console responded, holograms shifting, recalculating. The asteroid's path was diverted with minimal loss. Colonies preserved, lives saved, not perfectly but admirably. The pulse of the command beacon surged in approval. Observation, human-inspired decision-making recognized. The holographic figure intoned. Parameters satisfied. Ingenuity, empathy, courage. Proceed to next evaluation. Kael'thas exhaled, relief flooding him. We passed again. Zelran's eyes scanned the chamber. Not passed. Recognized. The humans didn't build this to give easy approval. They built it to test endurance, creativity, and morality. And we've been recognized for now. But the true challenge lies ahead. The wall shifted, revealing another corridor lined with vessels in various stages of activation. Lights pulsed in synchronization with the beacon's rhythm, each pulse like the heartbeat of humanity itself. Suddenly, a projection of a human figure appeared before them, larger than life. Its eyes seemed alive, piercing, intelligent. Next evaluation, courage under uncertainty. Risk is integral. Predict outcomes, but also anticipate the unpredictable. Humans survived by embracing the unknown, adapting in real time and refusing to surrender. Demonstrate capability. A wave of tension swept the team. The chamber before them was vast, a maze of energy fields, shifting platforms, and sudden drops into voids. Some paths offered safety but delayed progress. Others were faster but uncertain, potentially lethal. Kael'thas glanced at Zelran. "We can't calculate everything. It's too complex," Zelran nodded. "That's the point. Humans never knew all the variables. They survived through courage, adaptation, and the will to act despite uncertainty. We must do the same." Step by step, they navigated the gauntlet. Platforms shifted, lasers intersected, and holographic hazards simulated deadly outcomes. Zelran relied on observation, intuition, and improvisation, tools humans had honed for millennia. Every decision had weight. Every pause mattered. Halfway through, Kael'thas slipped on a moving platform. Zelran's reflexes, guided by both alien instincts and human ingenuity, grabbed him, anchoring both to a safety harness. The pulse of the beacon surged, almost approving their teamwork. It was more than survival. It was empathy in action, a quality humans valued as much as ingenuity. By the end of the corridor, they reached a chamber where the floor disappeared into darkness. A single vessel hovered above, massive, its energy field illuminating the void. The Terran hologram intoned, "Final evaluation, initiative, adaptation, recognition of patterns, interpretation of intent. Demonstrate the qualities that made humanity legendary." Zelran felt something stir within him, a surge of understanding, courage, and faith. He understood that the humans had not just built machines, they had encoded their spirit. Ingenuity, empathy, defiance, courage, creativity, and faith in the unseen, all embedded in systems that endured beyond time itself. He stepped forward, aware that failure now would trigger consequences he could barely imagine. But the human part of him, the part he had always admired, rose to the challenge. Survival was no longer enough. They had to embody the essence of humanity. And somewhere in the quiet rhythm of the beacon and the pulse of the fleet, Zelran felt it. A presence, vast, intelligent, almost divine. Not judging, not punishing, but acknowledging. Humanity had built more than ships. They had built a testament to courage, and that courage was now testing him. The chamber ahead opened into a cathedral of steel and energy, vast beyond comprehension. Zelran's sensors barely registered the edges. The ceiling seemed to vanish into darkness, lit only by the pulsing glow of thousands of Terran vessels suspended in orbit within the cavern. Each ship hovered as if in reverence, engines idle yet alive, brimming with silent potential. Kael'thas's claws clicked against the floor as he moved cautiously. "It's infinite. How could humans build this?" Zelran's jaw tightened. They weren't limited by time. They weren't limited by fear. They were limited only by imagination and purpose. At the center of the chamber, the command beacon glowed with unprecedented intensity. It was no longer just a tool. It was the neural core of the fleet. The heart where human thought, strategy, and instinct coalesced into a force that could span galaxies. Energy pulses radiated from it, brushing the team with subtle vibrations that conveyed awareness, calculation, and judgment. Then, a holographic figure appeared before them, a human commander towering and formidable. Its eyes seemed alive, piercing through the centuries. "You have survived evaluation," it intoned. "You have demonstrated ingenuity, courage, empathy, and the ability to adapt. But survival alone is not enough. Judgment is required." Zelran stepped forward. His chest burned with a mix of awe and fear. "Judgment? From whom?" he asked. The figure's gaze swept the chamber. "From the legacy of humanity. From the intent encoded within this armada. From the principles that guided our survival against impossible odds. You have awakened us, and now you must confront the consequences." Kael'thas trembled. "Consequences? Like what?" The beacon pulsed violently, and the hologram's voice echoed, almost reverent. "The Armada must assess the current galaxy. Threats, anomalies, civilizations. Decisions will be made according to the protocols of the Terran legacy. You have the option to guide them, or to be subject to them. Choice is the measure of worth." Zelran felt the enormity of it. They had not just awoken ships. They had awakened judgment itself, a system designed to weigh morality, ingenuity, and courage across cosmic scales. One misstep could doom civilizations. One act of misunderstanding could trigger devastation. He swallowed hard. "And if we fail?" The hologram's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "Then the Terran Armada will act according to the principles it was given. Efficiency, survival, and the protection of the legacy." Zelron's mind raced. Every human story he had studied, every legend of triumph and defiance now converged here. Humans had always faced overwhelming odds with ingenuity and courage, often defying logic and probability. That was their essence, and now Zelron realized it was encoded into the machines themselves. Kael'thas's voice broke the silence. We can't possibly anticipate all variables. The galaxy is too vast. Zelron nodded, feeling the pulse of the beacon synchronize with his own heartbeat. We don't need to anticipate everything. We need to act with clarity, morality, and ingenuity. That is how humans survived. That is how we survive now. The hologram stepped aside, revealing a control console etched with glowing Terran glyphs, schematics of entire star systems. Potential threats and historical anomalies flashed across its surface. Zelron approached cautiously. Each glyph, each data stream seemed alive, whispering patterns and possibilities directly into his mind. This is the judgment interface, he murmured. Everything humans left, Amir. We are responsible for interpreting it. Kael'thas swallowed. Responsible for life and death? Yes, Zelron said, voice steady despite the quake in his chest. And for understanding. For adaptation. For courage, he activated the interface. Streams of data unfolded like a living tapestry. Reports of alien civilizations, rogue anomalies, dormant fleets, and natural phenomena capable of reshaping entire systems. The Terran Armada would act on these inputs, but it sought guidance, intent, judgment, and moral reasoning. Zelron's thoughts raced. This was more than survival or exploration. This was the ultimate test of human essence. Creativity, morality, empathy, and courage compressed into decision-making under incomprehensible stakes. A soft pulse, subtle yet profound, resonated through the chamber. He understood instinctively. This was not just a test of skill. It was a test of faith. Faith in intelligence, in judgment, in courage, and in the unseen forces guiding the universe. Zelron looked at Kael'thas. We can do this, he said quietly. Not because we are perfect, but because we are human, or at least we embody what humans valued most. Ingenuity, empathy, defiance, courage, adaptation. The holographic commander spoke again, voice echoing through the chamber. The Terran Armada awaits your guidance. Act wisely, think boldly. Humanity's legacy is alive through your choices. Zelron took a deep breath. He placed his hands on the console, feeling the pulse of the Armada, the weight of human judgment, and the subtle presence of the universe itself, intelligent, vast and almost divine, and then he made the first choice. Zelron's hands hovered over the Terran console, the pulse of the beacon resonating with his heartbeat. The entire chamber, the Armada suspended within it, and the very moon itself seemed to breathe in tandem. For the first time he understood. Humans had built this not merely to endure, but to think, judge, and inspire even across eons. Kael'thas stood behind him, claws tense. Do you know what to do? Zelron inhaled slowly, centering himself. He did not know every variable, every possible outcome, every consequence of the decisions he was about to make. But he knew humanity. He knew their essence: ingenuity, empathy, courage, defiance, faith in the unseen. That was the compass he would follow. He initiated the first directive: reconnaissance of the solar system for anomalies that threatened life or stability. The Terran fleet pulsed in acknowledgement, thousands of vessels stirring, scanning, and preparing to act. It was instantaneous, efficient, yet deliberate, guided by the human principles encoded in its protocols. And then came the moral tests. Subsystems presented dilemmas: a rogue asteroid on a collision course with a colony of sentient aliens, a neighboring civilization expanding dangerously close to a star's habitable zone, and a rogue AI threatening a nearby planet. Each required judgment, balancing risk, creativity, and morality. Zelron acted using every lesson humanity had taught him through their history and myths. He calculated trajectories, devised solutions that preserved life wherever possible, and made strategic sacrifices only when unavoidable. The Armada executed his decisions with precision, a silent orchestra of human ingenuity in action. Kael'thas watched, awe etched across his alien features. They obey, and they understand. Zelron nodded. They are not just machines. They are humans amplified, judgment, creativity, empathy, all encoded eternal. A sudden pulse from the beacon made him pause. A new directive was emerging, one he had not anticipated. The Armada sought not just to execute commands, but to test him further, his courage, his empathy, his capacity to adapt under extreme uncertainty. A holographic Terran commander appeared, larger than any before, voice resonating through the chamber. Human legacy is not passive. Decisions have consequences. The galaxy awaits judgment. Demonstrate worthiness of command. Zelron's mind raced. One mistake, one misjudgment, and he could trigger devastation on a scale unimaginable. But he remembered the stories he had studied. Humans had survived impossible odds not because they were perfect, but because they persevered, adapted, and acted with courage even in uncertainty. He chose carefully, innovating solutions that balanced survival with empathy. He rerouted asteroid trajectories using minimal energy, stabilized expanding civilizations without direct confrontation, and neutralized the rogue AI with a combination of logic, deception, and creativity. Each action demonstrated the very qualities that humans valued: cleverness, courage, moral clarity, and the refusal to surrender to impossible odds. The fleet responded flawlessly, vessels moving with synchronized precision yet subtle individual judgment, a reflection of the human spirit itself. Zelron felt awe and fear in equal measure. The humans had built a system that could act, judge, and endure across time and space, yet it required a living mind to unlock its full potential. And then came the final test. A massive energy surge shook the chamber. The moon's crust trembled as if alive. The Armada had detected a threat of staggering proportions, an interstellar anomaly, a collapsing star cluster threatening multiple systems. The Terran fleet, though powerful, needed guidance. It was Zelron's decision that would determine the course of entire civilizations. He felt the pulse of the command beacon, as if it were a living heartbeat. Somewhere deep within its rhythm was the echo of humans, judging, guiding, observing, teaching. He made his choice. Risk everything to contain the anomaly, trusting the ingenuity and courage of the fleet itself. The vessels moved in unison, forming a lattice of energy and strategy across the solar system. Massive bursts of controlled energy stabilized the collapsing cluster, redirecting its destructive potential away from inhabited systems. Every calculation, every decision flowed through the beacon and the fleet, a testament to human ingenuity and courage amplified across eons. Kelthas exhaled, stunned. It worked. Zelron felt a tremor of awe and humility. The humans had built not just machines, but a legacy of judgment, courage, and ingenuity, alive long after their extinction. He understood the subtle divine presence he had sensed all along, not a god who intervened, but an intelligence woven into the universe itself, acknowledging courage, ingenuity, and faith. The Armada quieted, returning to a steady pulse, awaiting further guidance but trusting in Zelron's judgment. The chamber hummed softly, a living monument to the human spirit, a beacon of defiance, creativity, and courage that could span time and space. Zelron stepped back, eyes wide with reverence. Humans were never just survivors, he murmured. They were architects of legacy, judges of intent, and the arbiters of courage across the stars. Kelthas glanced around, awestruck. And we witnessed it. We survived it. We understand a fraction of it. Zelron looked at the pulse of the beacon, feeling it sink with his heartbeat once more. A fraction, he admitted softly, but enough to know this: curiosity awakened gods. Courage awakened legacy. And humanity never truly dies. It endures, it judges, it inspires. The ships above, thousands of Terran vessels hovered silently, their purpose fulfilled for now, but their presence a constant reminder. Humanity's courage, ingenuity, and willpower were alive, etched into machines, into legacy, into the very fabric of the universe. And as Zelron and Kelthas looked out across the vast chamber, the subtle, almost divine intelligence that had guided them pulsed gently, affirming a truth older than time. The human spirit, when awakened, could reshape worlds, judge civilizations, and endure beyond comprehension. And somewhere in the silent expanse, across stars and centuries, humanity's heartbeat echoed, eternal, unyielding, and impossibly alive.